Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Home 2024 NOFA workshop for first-time homebuyer projects. We are going to wait until about 1:35 to give everybody enough time to get in and be in on the whole webinar. So thank you for your patience. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining us. And as I said before, we're going to wait until 1:35 to make sure everybody can get here for the beginning. Once again, welcome. We will be starting in exactly 1 minute.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Home 2024 NOFA workshop for first-time homebuyer projects. I'd like to take a moment to let folks know that are attending this webinar that this funding is only available to cities, counties, or CHODOs that are certified by the state of California. And so just want to make sure if you're an individual attending that is seeking assistance for yourself, you would want to contact your local jurisdiction, the city or community you live within, and inquire with them what funding is available for first-time home buyer assistance. And with that, we'll get started. Next slide. So my name is Nicolay McKay. I go by Nikki. I am the Housing and Community Development Manager too. I manage a staff and a team that oversees and underwrites and distributes the funding for first-time home buyer projects. My team includes Francesca Wander, JT Marcel, Chris Gianello, Soledad Sandoval, and Stephanie Booth, who is not with us today. In addition, we have Albert Rowland and Robert Reistad that both fill roles as retired annuitants for our home team, and not listed on any of our materials in the PowerPoint is Joe McNicholas, who developed our application in our application portal. Next slide. For consistency and transparency, we ask that all questions you submit to HCD come in through our Home NOFA email inbox. That email inbox is reflected on the bottom of this PowerPoint slide. During the webinar, we will be answering questions in real time, and we ask that participants use the question and answer button. Next slide. Want to remind everybody that chat is disabled for participants. So again, the only method of inserting a question is through the Q&A. We are not taking split questions if you raise your hand. We prefer that you type them in. We will be taking a one break in about the middle of this presentation, and we expect it to last about 10 minutes or so. We are recording this webinar, and we will be posting this webinar along with all the other webinars for our NOFA workshops that we have had in the preceding weeks. Just a reminder, the email we want you to utilize to request either a copy of the final PowerPoint slide deck, if it is not posted on our website when you want it. It will be posted on our website along with the video of this workshop. It is homenofa@hcd.ca.gov. Next slide. So applications are due on May 22nd. If you've attended some of our previous webinars on different topics, we have amended the application due date so that the application is due before the Memorial Weekend holiday. And so all applications must be submitted by May 22nd before 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Next slide. Oh, thank you, Jay. A little bit about our presentation. We're going to go over our E-Civis application portal, our funding availability, our application limits, threshold requirements, how we are going to score applications, what is involved in the project feasibility and underwriting portion of our review. That includes our financial feasibility, our NEPA, and our relocation, in addition to several other things. Home applications must be assessed. So home applications can be assessed portal has been open since January 24th. However, it was open prior to us having this workshop and providing you information on how to navigate the application. The links for those are on this slide. You would want to go to the ecivis.com portal if you need help with utilizing the system. There's a systems user manual link that's available at the link provided in this slide. It is also available on our HCD website, along with a link to the system itself. Next slide. So for this 2024 NOFA, in round numbers, we have approximately $35 million that is going to be available to apply for funding for several different types of activities. 55% of all of the funding in our $35 million is targeted toward rental projects, which makes it about $19.9 million. 5% of the 55%, 5% is targeted towards first-time homebuyer projects, which this webinar is discussing. And that's approximately $1.8 million. 40% of the $35 million is for program activities. That is about $14.5 million. If program activities are undersubscribed, the funding will be utilized for other targets. 50% of the funding that we award must be committed to projects in rural areas. 15% of the funding that we award of the $35 million must be awarded to CHODOs, our community housing development organizations. And we have a 20% target to fund Native American entities. So if a Native American applicant applies for a first-time homebuyer project, their application and the amount of their application will go to be funded through that target. Next slide. So in 2022, 2023 versus 2024, there are some changes in our NOFA. One of the changes is our scoring factors have always been listed in the NOFA itself. And this year, because scoring factors is kind of one of those pieces of paper that you want to keep handy as you build your application, we published it in an Appendix D, so you do not have to print the whole NOFA to have those scoring factors available to you, and you don't have to search through the NOFA to try and find them. We've also reduced the maximum CHODO operating reserve from $200,000 to $75,000, and this move was made to make sure that we have sufficient funding to fund projects because of the lower amount available this year. Next slide. Also, we've reduced our funding project limit to $4.5 million, and the limit for first-time homebuyer is $2 million. So anything $2 million or under in an application for first-time homebuyer is what we're looking for. State recipient admin and state recipient activity delivery costs have also been reduced. For state recipients, you can get $50,000 in administrative dollars and $50,000 for project-related soft costs for the project that you are applying for. Next slide. There are monitoring fees that do not apply to first-time homebuyer projects. So I'm going to skip this slide. It's important to remember that pursuant to the government code, reflected on this slide. For cities only, the mayor or mayor pro tempore must sign all the written contracts to enter into a standard agreement. And so this is a requirement that the department cannot waive unless the city has an ordinance in effect that specifically allows the mayor to delegate to someone else to sign for him. If you have any questions about this, please reach out to our Home NOFA inbox and we will help guide you and answer the questions specific to your circumstances to make sure that the resolution that you submit is done correctly and that you understand what the expectations are for your standard agreements. For counties and community housing development organizations, this is because you're not a city, this does not apply. Next slide. So for CHODOs, our CHODOs must demonstrate capacity for each role that it intends to undertake. All CHODO applicants must submit with their NOFA application a complete application for your CHODO to be certified for the project you're going to undertake. And your CHODO certification will be for the project activities or program activities that you undertake. Next slide. And I guess we've reached the end of the introductory slides. I don't see any questions in the queue question and answer section. So we can continue on with the presentation. And I believe this is going to go to JT Marcel, who is going to go over threshold requirements with the group.
Thanks, Nikki. Folks have sat in on the previous ones we've done over the weeks. We've got fewer slides for this presentation, so we're moving along pretty quick already. Threshold requirements. Next slide, Mr. J. Application must be submitted by way of eCivis by May 22nd, 25 by 5 p.m. Please do not wait till the last minute. You don't want a hiccup to cause your application to not make it in on time. The site, the portal will shut down at a predetermined time and you won't be able to get your application in. So go ahead and get it in when you can, and sooner is better. Eligible applicants are state recipients. State recipients represent cities and counties on the NOFA Appendix A as state recipients. Not designated as home participating jurisdictions, PJs, by HUD, meaning getting a direct award from HUD. Not participating in an urban county agreement with a county designated as a PJ, and not participating in a home consortium. Projects or program activities must be located within the applicant's defined service area, and we'll cover that shortly. Next slide. Eligible applicants continued here are developers. They cannot apply for first-time home buyer projects, so we can move off from this one. As Nikki had already mentioned, CHODOs are eligible, and these are nonprofit corporations that meet all HUD CHODO certification requirements, and they must be the owner, project owner, sponsor, or developer, and Native American entities are eligible. Next slide, Jay. Here's where we talk about the jurisdiction. Eligible project location. Project must be located within a state home eligible jurisdiction on the NOFA Appendix A or a tribal trust land for tribal applicants. Cities may apply for projects within only their city limits, and counties may apply for projects within only their unincorporated areas. Eligible activities are rental new construction, development of a specific multifamily project on a specific site by a specific developer. Rental new constructions projects may be with or without acquisition. Transitional housing is not allowed. Rental rehabilitation project. Funds provided to rehabilitate a specific rental project on a specific site by a specific developer with or without acquisition of the property. Think here motel type conversions to units. Rental acquisition only projects. Acquisition of a specific multifamily rental project that meets all home requirements, including property standards. Again, transitional housing is not allowed. First-time homebuyer projects. These are you guys right here. Construction financing must include the following: new construction to develop homes on a specific site or sites. 100% of the home investment must roll over to permanent financing to first-time homebuyers. So the loan that they would get for their unit, their home, their SFR, it has to roll over to them at the time of closure. Developers are not eligible for this activity unless they apply as a HUD or HCD certified CHODO. So earlier we said developers are not. Yeah, they are, but they have to be HUD or HCD certified as CHODOs. So this is where you might want to partner up with a CHODO if you're a developer looking to do a project like this. Next slide, please. Project activity funding limits for first-time homebuyer, as previously mentioned, is $2 million. Only one home application per NOFA, or for this NOFA, no more than 2 activities. So you can have a rental project and a first-time home project. You can have a rental project and any combination of program activities. Only first-time home buyer infill new construction for CHODOs, or you can have a first-time home buyer project and combination of program activities for state recipients. Next slide, Jay. Administrative project-related soft costs and CHODO operating limits. As Nikki mentioned earlier, these have changed from last year. For state recipients, administrative funds are $50,000 and project-related soft costs are $50,000 as well. For CHODOs, CHODO operating funds is $75,000. Next, Jay. Hey, Jay. Applications must be received by May 22nd, 25, not 24, as we've already previously mentioned. Eligible applicant for first-time homebuyer projects are state recipients, as we've covered already, cities and counties, Native American entities, community housing development organizations, CHODOs, and a list of eligible jurisdictions are referred to in Appendix A. Next slide, Jay. Eligible project location, CHODOs only, must be in an area on NOFA Appendix A. List a state home eligible jurisdiction that is on the CHODO's Articles of Incorporation or Charter. State recipient projects must be located within eligible jurisdictions area. Projects for acquisition only are not eligible for funding, and no transitional housing is allowed. Eligible activity, continuing construction financing must include 100% of the home investment to roll over to permanent financing for eligible first-time home buyers and must be sold to eligible applicants. Construction financing must also include the following: new construction to develop home on specific sites, homebuyer mortgage assistance only, no home construction financing in a project that is being constructed or acquired and rehabilitated with other funds, then sold to eligible first-time homebuyers. Next slide. Your application must include market comparables, appraisal, and phase 1, phase 2. Your project may not need a phase 2 if the phase 1 doesn't call for it. So keep that in mind. Next slide, Jay. The project cannot have any pending litigation on the project. 2 CFR single audit report, state recipients only, filed with the state controller's office. This is any entity that would receive federal funds, being a state recipient or a tribal. If there are any findings, we'll cover that in a minute. Housing element compliance, state recipients only. Site control. Next slide. Yeah, maybe we moved it. So back to the single audit. If there's a finding in a single audit by the auditor, we need to know that that finding has been resolved and what that remedy was. So if you have a clean audit report, great. If not, any findings need to be resolved when you prior to your applying. Okay, now go back to the next slide. Property must be held in fee title. Long-term ground lease must meet the requirements of 25 CCR for rental to low-income families in accordance with 24 CFR. Must provide purchase agreements, option agreements, disposition and development agreements, exclusive right to negotiate, and conditional contracts. There are 5 acceptable forms of site control that avoid choice limiting NEPA problems. Choice limiting, you do not want to have. It will kill a deal for home financing. So you need to get your NEPA taken care of early on before you do anything to that property. Site purchase or long-term lease must be consistent with UMR requirements prior to submitting the home application. Option to purchase must be conditioned on the responsible entity's determination to proceed with project based on the results of subsequent environmental review and the receipt of authority to use grant funds. No costs to secure site control document must be a nominal portion of purchase price. Next slide, Jay.
JT, it's on the next slide. I'm concerned if you're not seeing that.
Yeah, I got you. It looks so familiar or similar. Purchase agreements, DDAs, option to lease, or exclusive right to negotiate may not be conditioned upon NEPA clearance or any other federal requirement. So your agreement cannot have something in there that says, if you're unable to get your NEPA clearance, this deal is canceled. There can't be a condition for NEPA clearance for anything or federal requirement. A conditional purchase contract may be used for an existing single-family home, 1 to 4 units, or an existing multifamily residential project. A leasehold interest on the project property must comply with all program requirements, including compliance with 25 CCR. We'll leave this slide up for a little bit for you. If you want to go ahead and get those links for further information, please refer to HUD's CPD notice and Assistant Secretary Mercedes Marquez August 26, 2011 memo on HCD's home web page under resources. Next slide. Yep, I thought that was the last one for me. Passing it off now to Miss Soledad Sandoval. She is another one of the reps that works the home program. Take it away.
Good morning or afternoon, and welcome to all of you. I'm Soledad Sandoval, one of the home reps here in the home projects program or home program projects. And I'm going to go over briefly the scoring and ranking for our program, the first-time home buyers. So these are the categories that we are going to be discussing. And again, it is an overview. We have the housing element, formula reallocation, rural area capacity, community need, project feasibility, project readiness, and state objectives. Three of these categories, or actually, I apologize, more than three of these categories have subcategories within them, and I will be discussing that briefly. Next slide, please. Your housing elements. Cities and counties are required to be in compliance with the state housing element law. Newly incorporated cities are exempt, until which time the city is required to submit the housing element to the department for approval. Please note that CHODOs in project to be developed on Native American lands are also exempt from this category. Next slide, please. The formula reallocation is worth 50 points. A jurisdiction that is eligible to receive HUD direct home allocation funds but declines the allocation may earn these 50 points. So please note, also new this year, all applicants must upload to eCivis proof that they received the allocation and also that they declined it. No points will be awarded to any other applicants for this category. Rural area, it's 50 points. Activities proposed in a rural community shall receive full points. No points awarded to any non-rural applicants. And by rural, we mean where the project is located. If the project is located in a rural area, then you will receive the 50 points. Please note that there is a rural certification worksheet in eCivis. We ask you to please complete that in full, sign it and upload it. It's part of your submission to get your rural points. Next slide, please. Capacity. So we're going to be talking a little bit about capacity. Capacity is one of those categories that has subcategories within it, and we'll be discussing those each. So first, subcategory is prior applicant experience, which is worth about 50 points. And in order to earn your 50 points, your applicant must demonstrate experience implementing local, state, or federal affordable housing in our community development projects. Excuse me for that. Our look back period is 7 years. So we will be reviewing the experience going back to January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2024, plus 2025 year to date, whenever you submit your application. Please be sure to complete and include in your application your experience worksheet as part of your overall application and in order to be able to get your points. Next slide, please. Next subcategory in this is prior performance. Applicant reporting. I apologize. I'm sorry. I skipped the prior development team experience. My apologies. This is worth up to 200 points. The development team needs to show project experience developing the same or similar type of subsidized projects. Our look back period is 5 calendar years for this subcategory. So we will be going back to January 1st, 2020 to review this and up to 2025 year to date. Next slide, please. Prior performance. So this is an interesting category because all applicants start with 200 points. Please note this category is scored differently than the others. As I mentioned, all applicants start with 200 points, and points are deducted if an applicant has failed to meet certain deadlines and has other deficiencies in one of the other subcategories that we will be discussing. The subcategories or factors are project reporting deadlines, applicant reporting, material misrepresentation, and monitoring noncompliance. Our look back period is January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2024. Next slide, please. We're going to be briefly reviewing what each of these subcategories is. So project reporting deadlines, any home project contract awarded in the past within that look back period that has failed to meet any of or reporting deadlines as outlined in the standard agreement may lose points. And within this category, this subcategory, there's points being lost for missing a permanent financing deadline, a project setup deadline, construction loan closing deadline, a project completion deadline, expenditure deadline. And each category is worth a different set of points. So it's possible to lose anywhere between 5 and 80 points for this. Next category, next slide, please. Second subcategory in this is applicant reporting. Applicants are required to submit reports and may lose up to 50 points in this category if reports are not submitted on time, not submitted at all, or are submitted past the deadline. All reports are typically due on the 10th day of the following month for the period they cover. For example, if you're submitting a monthly status report, the monthly status report for said month must be submitted prior to the 10th day of the following month. The same thing with quarterly reports. They must be submitted prior to the 10th day of the following month after the quarter ends. Also, please note, late or missing reports have a different score value, and they are scored per instance. So if you miss one monthly status report, you will be deducted certain points for that. But if you miss more than one, you will be deducted points for each and every single report that you not submitted. We ask you, if you do have missing or late reports for any prior projects, you may submit them prior to this current NOFA application deadline to reduce the points that you may lose in this category. Next slide, please. Prior performance, material misrepresentation. Any omission or misrepresentation made by an applicant that could jeopardize the department from funding a project or place the department at risk of a HUD monitoring finding shall have a 2-point deduction. Next slide, please. The fourth subcategory is monitoring noncompliance. There are 2 noncompliance categories, and you may lose up to 100 points total in this category. Monitoring. Well, for any monitoring issue, you will be deducted certain points if you fail to meet or remedy any monitoring findings that the department has mentioned. Also, late reports. Any late reports will lose points. So state recipients, if you are required to submit annual monitoring reports and annual reports, and CHOTOs are required to submit an annual operating budget and an annual report. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, developers are not able to submit an application for first-time homebuyer projects. So next slide, please. Community need. This category is worth up to 250 points, and it is awarded by activity type based on the date in the Appendix C found in our Home NOFA webpage. The link is provided. And the jurisdictions are listed, some per city and or county. We have 2 snippets for the first-time homebuyer, the following slide. So next slide, please. So this is the first-time homebuyer by county. The projects are listed by jurisdiction. Next slide, please. And this is a second snippet of Appendix C that references first-time homebuyers for the community needs. Okay, next slide, please. Community need and project feasibility. Our next is project feasibility. There's a self-evaluation worksheet or financial feasibility worksheet. Both are the same. That is uploaded for you on eCivis. It's a relatively simple form to complete. Please complete it and upload it. It is worth 150 points, and it's an all or nothing category. If you do not submit that financial feasibility worksheet, you will lose 150 points. And then also highest percentage of home assisted units, and essentially that is just the percentage of home units versus the total units in your project. In that category is worth up to 50 points. Next slide, please. Your project readiness. So, within this category is items related to the property itself. And we refer to this as project development plan. And all these categories are within this project readiness category. Please note that although we state market study on the slide, what we actually meet requires a project analysis, which include an analysis of all the comparable properties in the market area of the proposed project. And also, just a quick reminder, because we get this question often on the flood analysis section, you must submit the FEMA flood hazard determination form, the number. That is part of your floodplain analysis. You can have other documentation to support the flood analysis, but you must also include that form. Next slide, please. State objective points. So this is another category that has subcategories within this. And this is worth up to 200 points, and it's comprised of either committed financing, recovery assistance, or natural disaster survivors, and policy objectives, which within that has 3 additional subcategories. So next slide, please. State objectives, the first one, committed financing. This subcategory within the state objective category is worth up to 100 points. Applications will be scored based on the percentage of non-home permanent financing committed to the project by application due date. 10 points will be awarded for each 10% or 10% increment. Please note that projects anticipating any type of tax credits or future tax credits will not be considered as having committed financing, so they are not eligible for these points. However, if the applicant has 50% of its non-home permanent financing committed to the project, then they may earn up to 50 points in this category. Next slide, please. State objectives, continue. Do we have the same? I think we have the same slide twice. So let's go to the next slide, please. Recovery assistance for natural disasters. There is 4 ways for you to earn this, the points in this category, which is up to 30 points. One, if your project is located in a state declared disaster area impacted by the Boreal fires. We've provided you a link from FEMA. Please read that link, because within that link, there's additional information, not within the link, but within the document that comes up in that link. There's additional information and additional restrictions to qualify for that. Also, any project located in the park fires, again, please read the documentation prepared by FEMA. There are additional restrictions and additional information that will let you know if you do qualify for that. Next slide, please. And so the other 2 ways to earn these points is if your project is located in the federally declared disaster areas receiving individual assistance, or IA, pursuant to the HUD memorandum dated May 17, 2023. We provided the link also, so you can have more information. And any project that has been issued an award or conditional award from the department 2017 or 2018 Disaster Recovery Multi-Housing Program, or DR-MHP. If you have received an award from them, then you would be able to earn these 30 points. Next slide, please. So subcategory 3 in this is the policy objective. This is an OR category. So if you are working with special needs populations, you may be awarded the point if your proposed rental project has any of the listing funding sources. Please note that if you are serving a special needs or homeless population, the project must include supportive services in accordance with the core components of Housing First. under the Welfare and Institution Code, Section 8255. Next slide, please. You may also earn this point if you are directly serving a homeless population, excuse me, or addressing homelessness. Points should be awarded to all applications that propose rental projects primarily serving people experiencing homelessness or those at risk of homelessness as defined by 24 CFR section 578.3. Again, please note if you are serving a special needs or homeless populations, the project must include supportive services in accordance with the core components of Housing First under Welfare and Institutions Code 8255. Last method that you can earn these points, next slide please, is if you are serving extremely low income population. So for this category, this is worth up to 70 points. If your project proposes rental housing that primarily serves extremely low rental income families, you may earn these points. And we define, or Home defines, extremely low income families as those having an annual income that does not exceed 30% of the median family income of an area. Please note that and this is applicable to all projects here, is that homebuyer projects are not required to make this, so they automatically receive the full points. Okay. So we are going to go, this is the end of our scoring presentation, the scoring information. We are going to go to a question and answer period. And then following that, we'll have a 10-minute break. I think we see two questions.
Yeah, thanks, Soledad. Nikki told me I could go ahead and address these. So the two questions I see are, could we post in the chat or Q&A, and maybe one of the team members can send it to me and I can rebroadcast it to everybody as the host. By the way, my name's Jay Cortez. I'm your host today. But anyway, yeah, we'll put in the URL for that. It's also on our website, on the HCD website on our home page, but we'll throw it into the chat for you as well. So thank you for that. And then, so somebody's asking if your organization helps first-time home buyers. Well, we don't directly. But the rest of the question is, do we pick the first-time home buyer project one or program activities? It's a bit confusing. So to reiterate something Nikki McKay said at the outset, the home program, and I'll go a little further than she did, we, the state, as a participating jurisdiction for getting home funds from the feds, awarded out to just cities, counties, developers, including Chodos and certain Native American entities, and then they develop a project. And in this case, for first-time homebuyer subdivisions, you would want to find out about their subdivision and apply to them for down payment assistance to live in their subdivision project. Or if it was a city or county running a first-time homebuyer program in their community, again, you'd want to approach them and they'll be advertising. And so you work with them. So individuals, households cannot apply to the state for home funding. So I hope that helps. And I'm sorry if that's bad news, but that's the structure of it. I don't see any other questions, but I did want to make a couple of other clarifications that I was asked to make. One of them is back to that issue of the statutes regarding mayors having to sign contracts, and in this case, we're talking about home standard agreements with the state. If you get a home award, it's not that the mayors are authorized by an ordinance to delegate that. They actually cannot, according to the statute, but rather that the statute might say city manager can sign contracts on behalf of the city, or it might say whomever the city council designates to be able to sign a certain type of contract. This could be in a home authorizing resolution that says, yeah, the city council's making a resolution that says that the community development director or the city manager can sign the home standard agreement, then if there's an ordinance that says they have the power to let someone other than the mayor sign a contract, that's what we're talking about. There has to be an ordinance that creates one of those opportunities to work around the necessity for a mayor to actually be the one to have to sign a home standard agreement specifically. The other clarification I wanted to make is this, that on one of the slides, it incorrectly said that you're limited to filling out one application when you're applying for up to 2 home program activities. And the truth is, you must fill out one home application in eCivis for each home project that you are able to apply for. And in fact, if you're applying for a home program activity, so a program, not a project, right? There's actually a minimum of 2 applications involved. We call it a main application and a sub application. And in fact, a sub application, I'm talking to you cities for anything that you might apply for if you're doing, let's say, down payment assistance and owner occupied rehab. So that would be 2 sub applications. So please ignore the fact that it said 1 application for up to 2 things you might apply for. It's 2 or more if you're applying for 2 things. Now I'm looking at the Q&As to see, can a city apply to the first-time home buyer only without any other program activities? So here, the city can apply, yes, on the program activities side. Let's say it's not applying for a project. It can apply for 1, 2, or all 3 first-time program activities, being first-time home buyer, owner-occupied rehab, and tenant-based rental assistance. We did have a webinar about that. You can ask at homenofa@hcd.ca.gov. I will email you the slide deck and the PowerPoint tomorrow. It'll be on our website as soon as we can get it up on our website, all 5 of these webinars. But yes, if the city's applying for a first-time home buyer project, then it cannot also apply for a first-time home buyer program in the same NOFA year. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. And then I think I'm going to probably have to punt on these other questions because I'm not a projects specialist. So, but I'll read the question. If you are in a nonprofit that does housing counseling that helps people find first-time home buyers, what is the name of the application?
I can take that one, Jay.
Go ahead, Nikki.
So if you're a nonprofit that does housing counseling, but you are not a developer, and you are not a CHODO, and you're not a city or a county, you cannot apply to create a first-time home buyer project. Unfortunately, in order to apply for first-time home buyer funding to build a first-time home buyer project, which is a subdivision, you must be a city, a county, or a CHODO developer, which is a community housing development organization. Those are the only options. So if you're any other type of organization, you're not eligible to submit an application through the home program to develop a first-time home buyer project.
Okay, Nikki, would you like to read that next question and tackle that one, please?
So the next question is from Nadia, and it's about site control in California purchase agreement that has an inspection period during which the buyer can cancel the contract for any reason at no cost. The purchase agreement with an option requires payment to the seller. How is that less of a choice limiting option than a standard California purchase agreement? And my answer is the purchase option that requires a payment to the seller binds the seller to sell the project, the property, for whatever the price agreed upon is. That's what an option to purchase is. They can't raise the price on you. and they can't back out. And so I don't see a problem with having any type of agreement in your purchase contracts that says that if for whatever reason, when you do an environmental or phase one, that the property doesn't appear to be appropriate for the type of development you want to develop on the land, that you shouldn't be able to get out of that purchase agreement. But the difference with the purchase agreement versus an option to purchase is the option to purchase solidifies the price. For a purchase agreement, you guys, the parties can go back and forth and amend that price. We can submit this to our environmental team. So if you want to submit this question to our home NOFA inbox, we can send specific environmental questions to our environmental unit here at HCD for specific answers about the project you're contemplating.
And I'd like to add, Nikki, the way I read that question, it took me back to my realtor days, and a California residential purchase agreement is usually a thing. I think when the question might have been about a standard one that applies as you and I as a home buyer might be, our realtor might prepare, which has a built-in 17-day contingency for financing and inspection unless it's shortened or waived. And so, you know, I hope we're not talking about apples versus oranges there. Let me address the next question. It said, I think Anonymous was asking the difference between first-time homebuyer project and first-time homebuyer program. So in case that's true, I do want to clarify that when one of you, let's say a city or county, applies for a first-time homebuyer project, you come in with an address and a proposed number of units and proposed financing and underwriting and all that stuff and environmental upfront. So, you know, that's a project. It's a real thing. You come to us and we look at feasibility, underwriting, and all that stuff, and site control, et cetera. If you're applying as a city, let's say a first-time homebuyer program, that it's more conceptual. We would like a line of credit for this year. It would be $500,000 to be able to open up a program to the area, to the community, and say, hey, we've got down payment assistance funds available for you. You get community-wide choice. You just have to income qualify. The house has to be below the home value limit, you know, these sorts of things. So it's more conceptual, and that's something you're going to advertise for and hope people show up and hope that you end up assisting people to buy their first home. So it's a very, very different concept. What they have in common is, at the end of the day, a first-time home buyer must be served with the home funds. Okay, so again, the big difference is coming in at an app with an address and all that, and project and site control and all that, and you know, we get involved up front with some money to help you build out, and then all that money rolls over for us to assist the home buyers, or you, if you're a city or county, to assist a home buyer with all of those funds, so they kind of roll over to the ultimate beneficiary of them. So I hope that helps a little bit. That's from somebody who's not a projects person per se. I'm a programs person, but I wanted to see if that helped. So the next question was, can you apply for both a project so you can commit program income? Can you also apply for an unrelated program? So let's say a city or county has a decent amount of home program income on hand. Yes, it can apply for either a home program activity or a home project. We do have application forms in eCivis for PI only projects, as we call them, that you could apply for. So you could do that. And at the same time, you could be applying for grant funds to do something similar or something very different that's state home eligible according to this NOFA. So yeah, both are possible simultaneously. Next one, first-time home buyer eligible funds are lower than the application limit. So how much is a reasonable ask? That's a great question. I think what I'm seeing here is we can apply for up to 2 million, but we see that there's less than 2 million in the aggregate available for that 5% of the 35 million. Um, the, I'd say your ask is your ask. Nikki, I think I want to punt this question to you.
I agree. If we say we have to use at least 5% of our allocation for first-time home buyer, which rounds out to 1.8 million. But if your ask is 2 million or 2.3 million, you apply for your ask. We can't provide a partial award. That will just reduce the amount of funding available for rental projects.
Thank you, Nikki. And by the way, could you address that next question there?
Okay, so this one is, can you do a scattered site first-time home buyer project? So scattered site first-time home buyer projects lend themselves more to infill new construction than they do, which is a program activity, than a scattered site first-time home buyer project. I'm not going to say absolutely not here. I think that we would need more information about the project you have in mind. And so I would suggest that you send a request to the home inbox to have a technical assistance conversation with HCD so we can determine what is the best way for you to apply to do what you want to do.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. I'll go back on camera here. I meant to be on camera earlier. Sorry about that when I was trying to help answer questions. So I'm not sure. Let's see if this brings us to our break time. I think it does. It is 2:31. So we're going to reconvene at 2:40. Gives you 8.5, 9 minutes. So we'll see you then, and I'll put a comment in the chat to remind everyone as to when we're resuming, but it's at 2:40. Thank you. Okay, it's 2:40. Can one of my co-hosts please confirm that I'm still sharing the correct screen because I put aside my slideshow sorter and I want to make sure I'm still on the right screen.
You're on the break.
Okay, thanks. So give me a second, I'll pull my control back up here. I did have to get out of there for a minute. I'll do this. Yeah, hang on, I'm having a technical malfunction. There we go. I think I'm okay now. So we're back. And who's our next presenter?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Soledad, for your scoring and ranking presentation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. My name is Christopher Janillo with the Home Project team, and I hope you're all recharged. And I will talk about the information and documentation in regards to scoring and ranking. Next slide, please. So new this year, the scoring factors are now in your NOFA Appendix D instead of in the body of the NOFA. You'll find the Appendix D at our HCD website under the Home Investment Partnerships Program, Notice of Funding section, and the eCivis Solicitation Files tab. Next slide, please. So for project readiness, the maximum is 300 points, and there's 5 categories for scoring. It's your one. So they are the project development plan, PDP for short, your zoning, your local government approvals, your design progress, and your permanent financing. Next slide, please. So the points are awarded if your PDP item is included with the application. The documents are recent, so we'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. And they meet the basic requirements, which means they're made with the correct standard and prepared by a qualified person or entity. Next slide, please. So your PDP items are your market comparables, your appraisal, your phase 1 and phase 2, only if the phase 1 calls for it, and your VES, your floodplain analysis, your construction cost estimate, and relocation. Next slide, please. So for your market comparables, it's an analysis of comparable properties in the market area of the proposed project. It must be prepared by a licensed real estate broker or appraiser, and having no identity of interest with the sponsor, the partners of the sponsor, the intended partners of the sponsor, or the general contractor. Must be prepared and signed no earlier than 2024, and it must contain comparable of actual sales data from at least 10 other single-family homes in the market area of the proposed project. Next slide, please. For your appraisal, it's can be prepared no earlier than 2024. It's required for all acquisitions, but it's not required if the land is donated and there's no land cost in the development budget, and it's not a capital contribution. Also, the value of the capital contribution must be supported by the appraisal. Next slide, please. Continuing the appraisal is required for all projects except when there are no land costs. So we talked about that earlier. And there are no financial consequences, which require that the department assess the value of the land, i.e. the developer is not calculating a high percentage of permanent financing committed due to land donation. It's not required if the land is donated. The appraisal must also show the unrestricted fair market value of each model proposed to be sold. Next slide, please. For the appraisal, the home cannot be sold for more than its value. i.e. the total value of all loans secured by the property cannot exceed its value. If no appraisal has been submitted because land costs are not being charged to the project, the market comparables in the PDP-1 should be primarily relied upon to determine the feasibility of the proposed home sale prices. Next slide, please. For your phase 1 and phase 2 and your VS assessments, The phase one VES must be prepared no earlier than 2023. And the phase one and the phase two must be prepared no earlier than 2023. Again, this is relating to the recent shelf life. So for phase one and phase two, we give you 2 years, 2023, compared to your market comparables and your appraisal, which is no earlier than 2024. So the phase one must be made to the ASTM standard of E152721, and your phase two is to the standard of ASTM standard E1903-19. Next slide, please. So floodplain analysis. The flood cert is required on all projects, even though the project is not may not be in a flood zone. If the subject property is in a flood zone, then you still need to provide the flood cert and mark that it is not in a flood zone. So for the floodplain analysis, flood cert required on all projects must have the FEMA flood hazard determination form OMB number 1660-0040, must be prepared in 2023, and must be prepared by flood certification service or other qualified third party. Next slide, please. Now, if any portion of the site is in a floodplain, then you have to do the following. So you must demonstrate floodplain. You must demonstrate the floodplain incidental to the project, which includes the FEMA flood hazard determination form, indicates that no buildings in the floodplain, must have recorded covenants or restrictions required, or you have obtained a FEMA conditional letter of map revision, CLOMR, and that letter must be included in the application. Or you intend to obtain a CLOMR, and there must be a narrative explanation of intent included in the application, and the CLOMR must be required prior to loan closing. Next slide, please. So HUD doesn't ideally want a subject property to be in a flood plain, but if it is, there's an actual 8-step process in which we determine the best course to analyze the subject property. There's only a few steps listed on the slide. The full 8 steps is actually uploaded into our eCivis solicitations tab, solicitations file tab, and it's the documents titled Floodplain Management 8-Step Decision-Making Process Flowchart. So please go to our solicitations tab, download that document to see the full 8 steps for the floodplain analysis. Next slide, please. So your preliminary cost estimate must be prepared in 2024, must be uploaded into the eCivis portal. The estimate must be consistent with the development budget, and any explanation must be provided to support any differences. And the preparer could be your general contractor, and it's not limited to your architect. Next slide, please. So for the relocation general information notice and plan, 1 copy of the actual GIN is needed, a tenant notification list, the proof of delivery, and your relocation plan that is prepared and updated in 2024. So don't lose points by not submitting all the required documentation. Next slide, please. Okay, your zoning, local approvals, and fees. So this one is this portion is important because it's a little tricky. There are 3 different forms that are included in the eCivis application portal. All 3 must be completed. Those 3 are the verification of zoning and other local approvals, the verification of local development impact fees, the verification of water and sewer availability. So if there's any item on your zoning and local approvals that does not apply, of course, you're going to mark it as NA and not applicable. But you must provide an explanation as to why it is not applicable. In addition, these forms have 2 signatures on them, one by the local official and one by the developer. So you have to make sure that both signatures are on these documents. Also, The expected local approval dates do not receive points. The approvals must have been received by the time of and submitted with the application. So please keep this in mind that you have to have all three of these forms completed, must be signed by all parties, and all NA non-applicable items must be explained. And expected approval dates do not earn points. Those dates must be there and received by the time and submitted at the application time. Next slide, please. So these are your points for the zoning, local approvals, and fees for the first-time home buyer. Zoning verification is 10 points. All local approvals obtained is 75 points. And your impact fees is 30 points. So again, we put another note there because it's very important that expected approval dates do not receive these points. These approval dates must have been received at the time of and submitted at the application. Next slide, please. For your design progress, you must have an executed agreement with the architectural firm, a letter from the architect or construction specialist stating the status of the plans and specifications, and there's 3 options to choose from. These, depending on what is picked here, will provide different set of points. So, ready to submit to planning department, preliminary plans and specifications, or conceptual, which is just elevation and floor plans. So please look at Appendix D for the scoring criteria for these items. Next slide, please. So that brings us to the end of this portion of the presentation in regards to information and documentation regarding to scoring and ranking. So do we have any questions about that?
So I'll try to tackle these if it's okay, but jump in, Nikki, if you want. So it says our county is larger than some states. So how do we address your pre-selected site requirements? And I'm not sure what that means. If first-time homebuyers are going to select housing in multiple parts of the county. So in a first-time homebuyer program, yes, you have to give them choices throughout the unincorporated parts of the county if you're a county. I'm sorry. Okay. Jump in if you need to, Nikki. There's nothing pre-selected about a first-time homebuyer program. If you're a county applying for a first-time homebuyer project, you're selecting, sorry, my camera's off. You're selecting the site on which to build the subdivision or to have the developer build the subdivision. So little uncertain about the question, but I hope that my roundabout answer helped clarify that a little bit. And then the next question is a very good one. Just an FYI, the website says that the NOFA application deadline, I'm adding a couple words here to flesh it out, but for competitive applications is May 24th, 2025, not May 22nd. So kind of hot off the presses, we accidentally had the NOFA application deadline being on a Saturday on Memorial Day weekend. So it was decided today to pull that back to Thursday, May 22nd. And so as we speak, a website update is in the works. So you're hearing it here first, actually. Yes, it conflicts with what our website says at the moment, but shortly they'll be in sync. So we did update the PowerPoint slides this morning because, again, this is hot off the presses. So I hope that clarifies the discrepancy there. I'm still looking for one of my team members to kindly put the URLs in for both the home page where people can pull up our NOFA and the appendices, and also a link, please, to the eCivis application page. It is on our home page, but just for convenience. And once I get that from you, I'll go ahead and rebroadcast that to all the attendees here. So thank you, team, for helping me out in the chat on that. And with that, I'd like to.
Okay, hello again. This is Soledad Sandoval with the Home Program. So I am going to be covering briefly the project project feasibility or financial feasibility of your project, and just address a few of the differences on a first-time home buyer project as far as the financial feasibility, as opposed to the rent to new construction, which is one of the projects that we see more applications for. So the home assistance for home buyers is for acquisition, rehabilitation, or essentially for new construction of homes. All home funds used for homeownership assistance must benefit homeowners whose family income does not exceed 80% of the area income. We do like to mention that because it is 80% of the area median income, which is considerably higher than for the rental new construction. Okay, in addition to this, the home must be the homeowner's principal residence. The estimated value of the property must not exceed 95% of the median area purchase price. And the participating jurisdiction must establish resale provisions that safeguard the property's continued affordability or recapture all part of the subsidy invested. And I did say resale provisions, but which we do not allow, but I'll talk about that a little bit briefly, a little bit later in the slide. So next slide, please. So as mentioned, our first-time home buyers do have a income limit, 80% of the area median income. There's no rent limits for this because these are homeowners. Can you go back a slide, Jay? Thank you. And there is a home per unit subsidy limit. And as mentioned, there is a first-time home buyer home ownership value limit. All of these can be found on our website, and we've provided the website for you. And we're going to go through the next following slides, just give you a brief snippet of what each site looks like. Next slide, please. So these are our income limits for the on our website, and you can see how number of person of household and so forth. You can see that. The next website, please. These are our per unit subsidy limits, and these are based. All counties are the same, and these are based per bedroom count. So if the home is 1 or 2, 3, or 4 or 5, and for these single family homes, we have seen projects with 4 to 5 bedrooms each. The per unit subsidy is the same. It is based on bedroom count for all counties. Next slide, please. Your value limit, again, these are based on per county, and it's 95% of your median sales price for that county. Next note, please. Next slide, please. First-time home buyer financing notes. As I mentioned earlier, resale provisions are not allowed for, and that was determined by HCD. Loan agreements between the homeowners and either the children. Loan agreements are required. Loan agreements need to detail the recapture provisions for the home. And the permanent financing or the first mortgagee, because the home loan is a gap financing, so it is typically in second position. So permanent financing must meet the following requirements. Must be from an accredited bank or mortgage company. In the terms of it must be a minimum of 30 years. It must have a fixed rate. It must be a fully amortized loan, so no balloons, no negative amortization. It must be based on the current market rate, which is the Freddie Mac rate plus 100 basis points. And we also provided a link to that. And there cannot be any temporary rate buy downs. Next slide, please. First-time homebuyer home loan terms continued. So for the home loan is the minimum amount necessary for the gap financing. And what this essentially means is we want the home loan to be sized appropriately so the homeowner is not financially strapped for this. So we'd like to keep the debt to income ratios reasonable. So a higher home amount may be necessary to provide the gap finance so they can be comfortable buying this home or continuing with the construction of that. So it is a simple interest loan. It does accrue interest, but interest may be forgiven. And what essentially it is for the first 10 years of the note, interest is accrued, and then starting year 11, interest may be forgiven at 10% per annually up to year 20th when all interest is forgiven, as long as the homeowner meets all the requirements, and the main one being that the homeowner must still occupy the property as their primary residence. Again, as we stated, a simple interest. State recipients, so any city or county submitting an application, they may determine the interest rate for all the home loans. So it's typically between 0 and 3%. Any total applying it, the interest rate for that is 3%. Payments are deferred for the loan term, and they are all subject to federal period of affordability. Please note that the period of affordability for the first-time home buyers is based on the loan amount, with the maximum being 15 years for a $40,000 or higher home buyer's assistance. And I'd like to make one note on the term of the loan. A lot of the term, the length of the home loan must be equal to the length of the first mortgage. And for example, USDA has a first mortgage, they may go to 38 years. So your home financing would also be a loan term of 38 years. Okay, next slide, please. Procurement requirements of administrative subcontractors. They must follow a competitive request for proposals, procurement process in accordance with 2 CFR Part 200, the requirements listed there. Must receive state approval prior to executing agreement if desiring to contract with sole bidder. An alternative to contracting with an administrative subcontractor, they may enter into a home subrecipient agreement with a nonprofit government entity. Next slide, please. Again, we like to caution you, there's several worksheets that are part of the eCivis application that are part of a financial feasibility that you must complete as applicants. Please complete the pages in order. If it's a workbook, do not override our formulas because that would be detrimental to your application. And do not enter any information in the white cells. And again, all the first-time homebuyers application worksheets are uploaded to our via eCivis portal. There are quite a few, so please, I know that we are not having office hours, but you may request an appointment with one of us. So please connect with us with a home office email address. All right, I'm going to pass this. That's it for financial feasibility for this. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this back to Chris, who will be talking about our NEPA requirements.
Thank you, Soledad. Thank you, everyone. So next slide, please. In regard to NEPA, another very important component of the project feasibility is the NEPA environmental review. We discussed NEPA in the earlier threshold section of this presentation, but some points are worth emphasizing here. So please be very cautious about taking actions that can be considered choice limiting. Choice limiting actions are in the 24 CFR section 58.22. And upon contemplation of federal funds, there is a prohibition against any activity which would have an adverse effect on the environment or limit the choices of reasonable alternatives. So you want to make sure that the contemplation of federal funds is upon application. Is defined as the point at which you submit an application for home funds, at which point all potential choice limiting actions must cease. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? So again, from the date of application until the date of the authority to use grant funds is issued, all activity involving a project and site must stop. The limitation applies to a broad range of activities, not just to the land itself. And before undertaking any activity, consult with your home representative. Next slide, please. So there's warnings here. You must allow sufficient time to complete the NEPA review process. Mitigation might be required, which might prolong the process because the cost of it might prolong the cost and prolong the process, and the cost of which must be included in your development budget. Actions taken by the seller trigger a choice limiting action. And environmental review clearance is also required for other federal funding sources. But please note that some funding sources are not subject to Part 58, such as National Housing Trust Fund. So please refer to Part 58 for further details. And with that, it's going to be the relocation section. So I'm going to send this over to Bob Ristad, who will present this portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. This is really short, but I do have a couple of observations I wanted to make about relocation. Typically, we think of relocation with a rental project. You're doing rehab work, maybe there's demolition involved, people are being displaced. So that is usually the focus when you think about relocation. However, it's entirely possible your first-time homebuyer project site could trigger relocation if you have existing structures on the site, people living in them, etc. So there is that risk of, people being displaced. So definitely need to still clear relocation. And if you're not familiar with HCD's relocation process, just in a nutshell, you may look at your site and say, well, it's a vacant site. Okay, so you can provide us a picture of that and clear documentation that the site is vacant. Well, that's not the end of it, however, because our legal folks will still require you to have a certificate of non-relocation. So all of our relocation things, whether there's relocation involved or whether it's truly a demonstrated vacant site, still has to go through our legal department. Next slide, please. Okay. The other thing too is if you're thinking about it and you are familiar with doing rental project development, there was even a mention in our slide deck here about tax credits. Well, obviously you don't get tax credits for first-time homebuyer project, but the nice thing is you don't have to go through different rounds of trying to get your tax credits. So it's entirely possible that you get your NEPA, environmental clearance, done, and you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's on relocation that's been submitted with your application. Again, either demonstrating that you truly have a vacant site or providing the documentation that shows you have given notices to existing tenants, you have a relocation plan in place. So these are all of the considerations that a relocation plan must include. Uniform Relocation Act, et cetera, et cetera. So it is important to establish a date of initiation of negotiation, the ION, and prevent that date in the application. So we have had some situations, thinking rental projects, where there's a statement saying, well, we don't need to do that yet. That's going to happen much later. We're still in the early stages. That's not what we're asking with your home application. You still have to address relocation up front, even though it may be a very, very long time before anyone gets displaced when you start demolition work on the site to build your first-time homebuyer project. The other thing, too, is we don't want any surprises in the development budget. So by addressing relocation now, let's say relocation gets triggered. I've actually seen where businesses are having to be relocated, and I think that was even a first-time homebuyer project that that was under consideration at the time. So you don't want surprises well into your process and not budgeting for these things. So yes, definitely get your relocation items addressed and submitted with your application. Next slide, please. Okay. This is general relocation information. So this is the general information notice, or what we call a GIN. We do want a copy of the actual notice you are sending to the tenants. If you've identified there are tenants in a structure and they're going to be displaced, we want the tenant notification list, and we want proof of delivery. We also want a relocation plan, and that does need to be prepared or at least updated within 6 months of your application submittal. So the other documents that the other folks have mentioned say, well, you can have a phase one that was prepared back in 2023, or an appraisal could be prepared in 2024. This one, you're basically looking at having a relocation plan prepared or updated, let's say December of 2024. So this is a little bit different than some of the other documentation that you'll be submitting. As I said earlier, if relocation is not applicable, the application must clearly state the reasons why it isn't applicable. So I think that's about it. Again, relocation with first-time home buyers is a bit unique, but that doesn't mean it's not important. And since you're not going for tax credits, it's entirely possible that you could be getting a first-time home buyer project subdivision underway relatively quickly. You get your financing in place, you've got your construction financing, you get your home award. So there may be fewer hurdles to jump through in terms of actually getting your readiness together like you would with a rental project. So that's just my observation about it. And again, relocation is a key piece of that. We don't want your award to basically spin for a while relocation is being hashed out with our legal areas. So that's my 2 cents. Next slide, please. Okay, there are other federal overlays which may kick in. I'm not gonna go down the whole list, but just like a rental project, there will still be federal overlays to keep in mind. So labor standards may very well still apply for 12 or more home assisted dwelling units or houses. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. Any questions on this? And if not, I'll turn it over to Joe so he can give a demonstration of the worksheet that we have for feasibility that you'll be filling out and uploading to eCivis. Jay, do you see any questions that would
I
need to
see
be
no
addressed?
questions, so I'm going to hand it over to Joe. I'm going to stop sharing
All right.
so you can start
Thanks,
sharing.
everybody.
Thank you, Bob, very much.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, Joe.
All right, can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's we're not seeing we're seeing the previous slides, so you might want to share your other window at this point if you just fired up
Okay.
yeah. It's tricky in Zoom, everybody. Try again, Joe.
Is it working now?
Yeah, you might maybe it's a swap thing up there on the little drop down. Usually you end up with two little PowerPoint windows and you choose the
Yeah.
one without the previous slides showing in it. It's I'm still getting used to it, honestly.
Okay. I'll try one more time.
Okay.
Okay. That should be, all right.
Bingo.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph McNicholas, and I'll be presenting the eCivis solicitation portal along with the new Home 2024 NOFA multifamily application workbook. My presentation will consist of a slideshow as well as a live demonstration of the workbook in eCivis. The first step is accessing eCivis and setting up an account. The link to eCivis is provided in the slideshow, which will be available on the home website. Once you select the eCivis link, you'll need to create an eCivis account. I would like to emphasize that eCivis is a web-based portal where you complete and submit your home workbook application. The eCivis user manual is available on the eCivis solicitation page. After one profile is set up to access eCivis, please grant access to 2 additional staff within the application as a backup. Otherwise, only one person will have access. After you have created your eCivis account, you'll need to visit the home page, which is located within the main HCD website. The required Excel Home Multifamily Workbook is accessible at Home's website only. The Home Excel Workbook is not available in eCivis. Once you're in the Home website, you'll find a Notice of Funding icon among other icons on the website. To find the links to the Excel Home Workbook and the link to the Home eCivis solicitations, select the Notice of Funding icon. Download the Home 2024 NOFA Multifamily Application Workbook, which is only available on the Home website. Although the 2024 Home NOFA has 5 different solicitations, there is only one workbook. The Excel workbook will support the 5 solicitations. In summary, one workbook with the 5 solicitation options. By selecting the eCivis Grants Management link within the Notice of Funding option icon, you'll be taken into eCivis. Once you're inside eCivis, you will find the 5 solicitation options. You will notice there is the first-time home buyer's solicitation. Again, the Excel workbook will support any of the options you choose within eCivis. Now I'll be showing you a live demonstration of the workbook. The live demonstration will be an overview of the workbook. It is not intended to be an all-encompassing training of the workbook. Once you've downloaded the home workbook, there may be an Enable Content or an Enable Macro button at the top of the workbook. Select this button to enable the content and the macros so the workbook will function correctly. Do not cut and paste between cells and forms in this workbook. Do not cut and paste between other workbooks in this workbook. For example, if you have a team working on this and one team fills out the unit mix and another may be doing the scoring section, and at the end you feel you should just cut and paste it into one final workbook, that would break many of the macros and pick up many formulas. So you need to work on just one workbook and have your team pass the same workbook around. The first 3 tabs are the instruction tabs. There's a home cover page, and the entity workdoc tab. There's a reference tabs to inform you which organizational documents may apply to your organizational structure. The data input portion of the workbook starts at Project Overview. Please note that the cells you encounter in the workbook will be different colors. A yellow cell is unprotected, which requires data input from the sponsor or applicant. An orange cell alerts you that a document may be needed to be uploaded into the eCivis portal, and blue cells are unprotected cells which require data entry or scoring cells. A red cell will alert you that data you've entered has failed to meet a requirement or the data is insufficient. You will notice that some of the input cells have drop-downs and some are free forms. For example, row 12, you'll notice an exceptional circumstance free form where you can describe any exceptional circumstances. For example, row 17, you will encounter a drop-down, which provides a choice for you to select. I will select the county here. I would like to demonstrate that additional sections of the workbook will open up based on how the preceding question was answered. For example, row 25, if you plan to apply or have been awarded other funds for this project, you would select yes. And now a macro is enabled, and you will notice that in a few seconds here, other sections of this workbook will open up based on your yes answer. This will take a few seconds. So now that you've selected yes, you have been previously awarded other funds. There's more questions for you to answer. On row 69, I'd like to point out that here you see a red caret, and if you hover over it, it will give you some guidance or clarification to help you answer the question. On row 85 is one of the many upload prompt fields. This is to alert you that once in eCivis, which I will demonstrate later, you'll need to upload a document. I will answer yes, that this document will be uploaded. Not all upload fields will apply to each and every project. You are to complete the workbook from left to right. These green tabs, you go from left to right. Throughout the workbook, you'll notice that as you complete the tabs from left to right, more information will be pre-filled. On row 91 is a blue link. Once you select a link, you will be taken to a web page or source document to assist you in answering the question. Row 99 is where you would enter your sponsor's name or applicant name. I will enter a name. And as you'll see, as I enter this, it will pre-fill in many of these other tabs below. On row 259, I would like to show that there are many optional or additional note sections in the workbook. You would freeform or provide additional information or explanations to your answers. The explanation or clarification you provide will be reviewed by your HCD team. On row 300 through 306, you'll notice this red box. This is to emphasize that the data in this section will carry over to many other required sections and other tabs in the workbook. So make sure you complete this. On row 436, you will complete the project milestone dates. The milestones dates you provide will be memorialized in the standard agreement if you receive an award. Again, at the bottom of the project overview tab, you can provide additional comments if necessary. The next tab is the unit mix. And you will enter data again from left to right. I will enter some data here. And you will notice over here that there is a possible total grant amount based on the data you entered, $2,080,000. I'd like to point out that if you had not gone in order from left to right of these tabs, for example, if you skipped ahead and started working on the unit mix first and did not complete the project overview, you will see this did not feel, because we need to know the county to give you the proper possible grant amount. So please complete these tabs in order from left to right. I'll enter a few more pieces of information here on the unit mix for my example. The next tab is the contact list, and you'll notice how they previously entered the sponsor's name. It will carry over, and many other data that you enter will carry over throughout the workbook. Here's the development sources. You would complete your development sources. I'm just going to enter some data here. And again, here's the development budget. I'll just enter some information and you will see how it will carry over. On the operating budget, you will enter income and expenses for the project. Please note the comment box where you may explain any expense if necessary. For example, on row 107, you will see another expense. Please provide the detailed description of the other costs in this sections. Do not simply state other without an explanation or comment. We'll just enter some data here. As you go to the cash flow worksheet, you will notice some of the data that I've entered has carried over into the cash flow worksheet. So as you complete these tabs from left to right, more information will be pre-filled. I'd like to show you the home scoring section, how this works. If your housing element is compliant, notice I hit yes, I have the 50 points here, and my 50 points are up, have scored here. Please complete all the cells. I'll show you a quick demonstration of why it is important to complete these cells. As you notice, I've completed these, but I have not entered a date. And if I enter a date that is before the deadline of January 1st, 2020, I will not be given any projects points. If I enter a date that is within the required time frame, you'll notice the 200 points. Again, this will carry over up to the top. Please complete all these cells to get your correct scores. At the bottom of this worksheet, you will notice the many upload fields that may apply to your project or what we need to review to verify your points that you are requesting. At the end is the document checklist. For every place where you answered yes, it will alert you that you intend to upload a document, and it's a good way to track. So that's my brief overview of the workbook. Now I'd like to take you, so what do you do when you completed the workbook? So after you've completed all this information from left to right, go back and review all the information again for accuracy. Once you're done with your workbook, you would need to upload it into eCivis along with many of the other documentation that's required. So now I will take you into eCivis. So here we are into eCivis. I'll give you a brief overview. Here are many of the tabs for information you'll need to put into eCivis. And yes, some of the information you need to enter twice. You'll enter it on the workbook. You'll need to enter it again into eCivis. For example, an application summary. You will notice if you had a worded other projects, you would select and download the file here. So as you complete all these forms in eCivis, only once they're all completed will you get the green submit button. If you'll notice the notes here, after you hit submit, you will not be able to edit any section. When it's submitted, it'll be received by HCD and the home team for your review. So that concludes my workbook and eCivis overview. And I'd like to turn it back to Jay. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joe. Great job. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A, so we're just going to keep rolling and get you out of here just a couple minutes late. I think we advertised this as a 2-hour webinar. So as you can see, we are happy to do technical assistance consultations with you. Meet anytime on Teams, anytime before applications are due with you to help you with your questions, whether it's about using eCivis, using our forms, just your, hey, we're thinking about this kind of project. What do you think? We have some program income on hand. Could that play, in with a grant application? So we have a team here to help you with those sorts of questions. And so all of your questions, it all starts with emailing homenofa@hcd.ca.gov to request it says a call, so it might be a call or an email to say, let's set an appointment to have a Teams meeting, and that way we can be face-to-face or virtually so, and be able to share screens and all that stuff. So keep that in mind. And then next, just another reminder that technical questions, or requests for technical meetings should go to the Home NOFA inbox. And so it's all over the place. Can't miss it. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Nikki for any final comments.
So my final comments are thank you for attending. I hope you found the material informative for your applications. I want to reiterate again to please take advantage of the technical assistance that we're offering as one-on-one assistance so that we have the opportunity to discuss your proposed projects in depth and help you submit the best applications that you can for our limited funding for this round. And I would also like to wish that you all have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And with that, we'll end this and remind you that you can request a copy of the slide deck and of this Zoom webinar just by emailing us at Home NOFA. Thank you so much. Have a great day.